Thank you and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to do this afternoon is to talk you through some of the changes that are planned as we move, and we all move at GCSE certainly, from a modular scheme that many of us have known for a long time to what's called a linear system of assessment, which probably is more familiar to older teachers such as myself. Some of the information that I'll give you applies more broadly, but obviously what we're most interested in is how this move to a linear style of examinations affects citizenship. In a sense, this is where I came in with linear examinations. Basically, linear examinations are doing the examinations at the end rather than in smaller bites in modules that many of our students over more recent years, many of our teachers have become used to. I suppose in a subject like citizenship there's no bother in a sense, considering some of the initiatives behind this. It is a movement that is going to take place, and for us in citizenship, where one of our key areas is power politics and the media, I guess we're probably more aware than most people about the sort of initiatives that are taking place in education, and to a lesser degree perhaps how they're going to affect us. It's going to affect all GCSE subjects, some more than others, and I'm pleased to say, in words of reassurance, that in citizenship there really are relatively few changes going to take place. So that's one of the good things in delivering this particular element of the training. What we're really saying is that examinations are, and we'll talk about the timescale, going to be taken at the end of the course. In a sense, we're talking about end of course examinations. Now, briefly, this movement is going to take 2 years in a sense, and it's going to start really for us in September 2012, which is it's not that far off when you think of the amount of planning you do before a course starts in September. It may seem several months away, but we've got to be making plans now if we feel there are changes going to take place. As I've said, there aren't many in citizenship. Doesn't stop us thinking about it. One of the big changes, which will certainly affect a small number of subjects, are additional marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar, what we've come to call the SPAG marks. Now, they will affect GCSEs in English literature, in geography, in history and in religious studies. So you've got whole areas there of arts, humanities. Not citizenship. There will not be additional marks, nothing new for citizenship. Something else that's going to happen as we move to linear is we can't have any resets, or your students can't have any resets before they actually cash in their qualifications. So we're talking end of course exams, and we're certainly talking fewer opportunities for resits. There's going to be something of a restriction in examinations. I will come to that in the way it will affect Unit 1 and Unit 1 only in citizenship as I move through the slides. I'm asked a lot of questions on controlled assessment, far more than I'm ever asked on examinations. And again, I can reassure you that controlled assessment can continue to be conducted at any time. You don't have to alter your own individual timetables. For me, one of the big advantages of the Edexcel course is its flexibility. And you have the flexibility, and you will continue to have the flexibility to timetable your controlled assessment, the writing under controlled conditions, Unit 2 and Unit 4, at any time you wish, but, and there's usually a but, you can only submit the controlled assessment at the end of the course. Back to this whole idea of end of course examinations. You can see, I hope you can see, a timeline. If you're like me, you sometimes find these timelines just a shade difficult to deal with, but I do rather like this one, and I congratulate whoever at Edexcel has managed to put it together. Let me go back. Sorry about that. As you can see in the timeline, some things are starting to change a bit earlier. That's if you've got 3-year courses and it doesn't affect citizenship. What we're looking for as we move on to citizenship are courses, as I've said, starting in September 2012. That's when we first start teaching the new linear GCSE 2-year courses, and those are for examination in summer 2014. Now, what's important to us, I guess, and many other subjects, is that your students will still be able to enter for modular examinations in the summer of 2013. So in effect, we still have a year beyond 2012. We have summer 2013 for entry to modular courses. So if you're starting to panic a little bit, please don't. What we will see, and again I've said before this will affect Unit 1, is that the Unit 1 examination in January will appear for the last time in January 2013. We did start this a couple of years ago. It's proved increasingly popular, and it will happen again in January 2013, just for the Unit 1 examination. That will be the last time. As you can see on the time chart, it won't be available in January 2014. Again, part of the change is cutting down on opportunities to some extent for resits and to some extent to do exams any time other than in the summer series. The only exceptions to this are going to be maths and English. So for the great majority of subjects we are going to see perhaps a more restricted examination timetable. I hope that time chart is clear, and it means there's quite a reasonable lead-in. Sometimes we have these changes and we get used to changes, and we don't tend to get a great deal of time for the lead-in. All change is threatening to some extent, but I want to continue emphasizing the reassurance that the change for citizenship itself is really quite limited. So that, I hope, gives you a clear idea of the time chart as it's going to be, as we can see it at the moment. Let me stress again, no new marks in citizenship for SPAG. You can see there in the heading to that slide that we're talking minimal changes to the specifications. There's always a warning on this, and we've always got to say that in the draft specifications submitted we do not envisage any real change. Again, certainly not in citizenship. We really don't. You haven't suddenly got to learn a lot more material yourself, teach a lot of different material. We will be able to go ahead with the sort of subject content that we've known for the last few years in citizenship. And by the time we get to summer 2014, candidates will have to take all their GCSE assessments at the end of the course. It's this end stage of exams. And that means basically for all subjects except English and Maths, the May-June period. We're going back to May-June as the main time for exams. I'm sorry if I'm labouring the point about SPAG, but there it is again. And if your colleagues are involved, interested, for those 4 subjects, English, Geography, History, Religious Studies, the SPAG changes actually come in from January 2013. I say again, hopefully almost for the last time, this is not going to affect us in citizenship. We're not planning any changes in content, and we're not planning any changes in structure. I said when I started that the controlled assessment would continue to be timed at the discretion of individual centres. You know, if you want to do this fairly early in the course, as some centres certainly do, you're still free to do so. What you can't do is to submit it until the end of the course when the students are also taking their Unit 1, Unit 3 examinations. Now, it's also possible to say that controlled assessment unit results may be carried forward if a student wishes to retake the whole qualification. As I say, there will be fewer chances for retakes, but if a student wants to go on, say the next summer, and take a citizenship examination again, if the student wishes, if you wish, that's your advice, the result for the controlled assessment can be carried forward. You don't need to worry about the correct task because we don't have specified tasks for citizenship. Again, a big advantage of the Edexcel theme is that you're able, with your students, to choose your own tasks for Unit 2, Unit 4 controlled assessment, as long as they're in line with at least one of the range and content areas. That choice is yours. That is not going to change. There will not be just a small number of prescribed tasks. You'll be able to have exactly the same amount of choice that you've had before. Here we are again, the emphasis on not normally being allowed to carry unit results forward from one exam to the other. The first point you can see there doesn't apply. It deals with single and double awards. But if the candidate wishes to retake the whole qualification, have another shot at the exam units, they can carry forward the controlled assessment. They've done well in the controlled assessment, think I'm really not going to do any better, carry that mark forward to the next time they retake. Now obviously one of our central areas in citizenship, one of the 3 big themes in Unit 1 and running right through the course, is power, politics and the media. And here we have, I suppose, both the political element, the media element, and to some extent the power. We're all guilty, whether we like it or not, of talking about 5 GCSEs. We often say 5 good GCSEs, but basically we talk about what's called on here the headline indicator of 5 GCSEs from A starred to C, including English and mathematics. And that will continue. For good or for ill, that's what the papers will continue to talk about. I guess that's what the politicians will continue to talk about. And I suspect many of the parents will continue to talk in those ways. All qualifications, regardless of size, are going to count as the equivalent of 1 GCSE. I think that's an area where we're waiting for a bit more information, but that's as far as we've been told so far in the exam boards. We will still, and I hate this distinction, I'll be perfectly honest, between vocational and academic. We will still have vocational and academic qualifications. They will continue to be recognised under the new linear system, and Edexcel certificates will also be included. I guess many of you over the last few months have at least heard of the E-BAC qualification. Normally, if a word is prefaced by E, the letter E, these days it tends to mean electronic. Not so in this case. The E is for English. You will have heard of the International Baccalaureate. Some of you may well be familiar with it. But certainly over the last 12 months we've heard more and more about the E-BAC, the English Baccalaureate. It is, to use the modern jargon, a new performance measure, and it will go to any student who gets these good GCSEs, grade C or above, or accredited certificate equivalents for English, maths, history or geography. I see two sciences before me. I'm not a scientist, obviously. I take that to be a reference perhaps to double science, but I'm not absolutely sure, and an ancient or a modern foreign language. Those subjects will form the basis of the E-Baccalaureate, and I suspect increasingly over the next 2 years more and more prominence will be given to the E-BAC and those particular subjects, which sadly, obviously, from my own point of view, purely subjective judgment, doesn't include citizenship. What I'm going on to now are the minimal changes, and again I stress that word minimal, to our own subject. If we have any changes to the citizenship specification, they will be only in minor areas, such as the response form, the assessment form, the writing up form that we use for Unit 2 and Unit 4, the controlled assessment. We've already revised Unit 2, and it will run from the end of 2011 to the end of 2013. Many of you will be familiar with the very slightly new wording on some bits of Unit 2. I've been asked the question several times, what happens if we use the old form? Some people did this before there was any announcement about the new form. Your students will not in any way be disadvantaged. Your students do not have to copy it all out again on the new form. The changes are very minor in the Unit 2 response form, and they're there, we hope, to clarify, to help the students where they are there. Those are the changes we are talking about. The Unit 4 response form will not be reviewed until after the summer 2012 session. We do not at this stage envisage any changes in the Unit 4 response form beyond summer 2012. We will continue with short course, Unit 1, Unit 2, and the full course, Units 1, 2, 3 and 4. Something that will be very important to you is that centres will continue to have the freedom, the flexibility that makes it a bit easier for you as a citizenship teacher to plan the curriculum, to plan what you're going to do, to plan your delivery. You will still have all those freedoms that I think are characteristic and a great strength of Edexcel Citizenship. So that the key changes, where they do, are in the timing of when the students actually sit the exams or submit work for assessment. There it is for the last time. No additional marks for SPAG in citizenship. But we will continue to take into account, as we've done for a number of years, the quality of written communication. That will continue. That's something we've had. We had it in the old specification. We've got it in the new. And if you're not entirely familiar with it, you will find that when you look at the assessment criteria in Unit 1, in the last bit of Unit 1, in the extended writing, there'll be a reference in the criteria to the quality of writing, the quality of written communication. In Unit 2 we have it in Section 4. There are 4 assessment sections. We have it in the 4th. In Unit 3, if you do the full course, whichever option you take, there are 3 options you may take. Everyone ends with question 15. Everyone has extended writing, and everyone will have QWC. And finally, again, if you do the full course, in the controlled assessment in Unit 4, where there are only 3 sections, you will find it in that last bit of criteria. So we will continue with what we've had before, just looking at quality of written communication. Nothing is going to be different there. The structure of the exams, the way in which they're set out, the type of questions, everything that you've become familiar with since we made the change and developed the new specification, that structure will remain exactly the same. Unit 1 and Unit 3, if your students do Unit 3, will be structured in exactly the same way, marked to the same criteria, and your students will have the same amount of time to do those examinations. The change, you can see there, January 2013. That's, as I've said before, the last time that your students can be entered, if you're one of the centres that does enter, in January 13. You've got one more session left, will be the last time they'll be able to do that. After that, the opportunity will not exist. The choice of tasks I've mentioned, the response forms I've mentioned, will remain very much the same. If there are any changes, most minor changes in wording done to help the candidates. What you've got to remember is, though you can do the controlled assessment whenever you want, you can only submit it for external assessment at the end of the course. I've said before, and I've probably said 2 or 3 times, as I've said several of these this afternoon, but I've got to keep saying them. It's important that you know this and that you are reassured and you don't feel there's massive amounts of extra work. There really isn't. Units can't be resat before the cash-in. Got to wait till you cash them in before you think of resitting, and you can carry forward in Unit 2 and Unit 4 the controlled assessment results if you want in any resit. We will at Edexcel try to continue giving as much support as we can. Again, I think Edexcel quite rightly prides itself in the amount of support it gives for teachers. Some of you may be aware, I hope everybody's aware, of the Ask the Expert service, which I think is one of the leaders, not the leader, in examinations. It's freely available and free of charge. It's an email service. You'll find it on the Edexcel website, and you simply send an email and that email will be rerouted to one of the experts. It might well be me, it might be one of the principal moderators, and we will provide a rapid answer within 3 working days, hopefully earlier unless we're away, on anything at all to do with citizenship. Mostly the questions, and we've had lots, have been on controlled assessment, often on the sort of tasks that you or your students are considering. Is this okay? You want to know. Obviously you want to know that. It's the most important thing. If you get the task and the title that isn't really going to work, it's no good finding that out when you get your marks back at the end. If you've got any doubt about that or any issue, controlled assessment, examinations, please send an email to Ask the Expert. I've really enjoyed answering those questions. It's made me a lot of contacts. It's given me a very clear idea about what centres are doing for their controlled assessment tasks. You will find over February, March and probably into April some mailings just to make sure that you're kept up to date about the reforms. Do go to the main Edexcel website, which is regularly updated, and I'd also advise you, actually, although it's not on the slide, to go to the Ofqual. Ofqual is the regulator. It will be overlooking all the changes. It does update quite regularly. I found the Ofqual page is useful and informative. And of course, look at the citizenship subject page. You will see a web link there. I know several people have sometimes found it difficult to find the citizenship web page, but my advice is obviously use that web link. You'll get straight to it. The problem has often been, if you're looking for information, it's one of those boxes where it's GCSE 09. I know that doesn't seem very rational because it's 2012 at the moment, but it's GCSE 09 because it was in 2009 when the new spec started to come into existence. So please don't think you're alone. Citizenship teachers often don't have reassurance of a large number of colleagues round them. They can be quite isolated. You're not alone. There is lots of support from examiners, from the citizenship subject team, and again, we want to reassure you. In summary, we're going from modular, something that many, certainly younger teachers and a great many students have become accustomed to. They've known nothing else. We are going from a modular system, we're going back in many ways to where I started, in a linear system, end of course type assessment. We're going to have these additional SPAG marks in English Lit, History, Geography and Religious Studies, not citizenship. We're not going to change the subject content. We have no plans to change the content of controlled assessments. You can't have resits before cash-ins, and you will, under the new arrangements, see exams restricted unless it's English and Maths. You will see it restricted to the summer series. We'll still have that headline banner, 5 good, A star to C passes. I use that word in inverted commas. That will continue to be currency, will be talked about. I guess will be a form of measurement, and I suspect another form of measurement will be how well your students do in the new E-back. And I come to the stage now where I've done my chat. I hope I've covered everything that you need to know. I've been selected on the basis of my knowledge of citizenship rather than my technical expertise. I will tell you that. So it's a question of, are there any questions? And if so, I will endeavour to answer them.